what I say.
On that,
That's what you
on
gotta-
that note,
McCall, do you want me to go ahead? Good afternoon and welcome to the Board of Education meeting. We're going to be convening the meeting in just a couple of minutes, and I know that there are folks from the Board of Public Ed at least on the phone. If you'll mute your line unless you're talking, it would probably make it so we can't hear other sort of extraneous stuff. We'll have an opportunity for public comment at approximately 2:15. At that time, we'll give also those members of the public an opportunity who wish to comment the opportunity to do so. I'll now call this meeting to order, and we'll begin with a roll call. McCall, will you please take the roll?
You've got it, Governor. So Governor Bullock,
Here.
Commissioner Christian,
here.
Superintendent Arnson,
Good afternoon.
Regent Miller,
Here.
Regent Tuss,
Here.
Regent Sheehy, Regent Nystuen, Regent Dombrowski,
Here.
Regent Rogers, Regent Lozar,
Here.
Member Becker, Member Stearns,
Present.
Member Barnhart,
Here.
Member Keith,
Present.
Member Lacey, Member Quinlan, Member Bremner, and Member Schottel.
Present.
Great again. Thank you, and thank you for participating in this Board of Education meeting. I recognize that the work that you all do truly takes time away from your families, your day jobs, and your communities. And on behalf of all Montanans, thank you for your service. Well, I recognize that the service often goes with very little recognition. We see that impact reflected in amazing, incredible things happening in Montana right now when it comes to public education. I think we can all take pride in knowing and recognizing that investing in our public education and doing everything we can to ensure that it's that great equalizer, it knows no partisan bounds in our state. When I think of even the last legislative session, an increase of $32 million of state funds over the biennium into higher education, $77 million over the biennium in our K-12, freezing college tuition for 6 of the last 8 years, $2 million then with the help of the university foundations matching to really address the need-based aid in our university system, recognizing that the need for success is all across our state, getting $350,000 for high-set training for our tribal colleges, and long and needed investments in infrastructure from Romney Hall here at MSU to the Dental Clinic Lab at Great Falls College, ag research centers, and overall infrastructure for the state. It's more, though, than, from my perspective, when we gather around to discuss education, it's more than just about the money. It's the ability to continue to innovate all throughout this system. I'll give a couple examples. Last month, I had the pleasure of announcing that the state of Montana had actually reached a new milestone when it comes to school broadband. 100% of our K-12 public schools now have access to high-speed broadband in accordance with what would be the FCC's minimum goal of 100 kilobytes per second per student. On the one hand, we still have a ways to go, but that's up from just 78% in 2015, thanks in part to also that public-private partnership with Education Superhighway. During that same time, bandwidth costs for our schools have decreased by 76%, down to $2.40 per megabyte from about $10 only 4 years ago. Additionally, 60% of our schools now have upgraded to fiber, with only 62 schools to go that still need to be upgraded to that scalable infrastructure. So we continue to bridge the gaps between urban and rural. And while progress beyond the FCC guidelines as necessary by ensuring that all students have access to high-speed broadband in our public schools. That not only helps at the K-12 system, but it also can help bring higher education into those schools, making sure that they're better prepared for modern and changing workforce. In another area, just last week, we celebrated National Apprenticeship Week with several events here in Montana, including welcoming the largest ever pre-apprenticeship carpenter program with Great Falls Public Schools, and the first home health agency to sponsor apprenticeships in Bozeman. Certainly apprenticeships are an all-time high in our state. It means more opportunities are available than ever before for students who want to join the labor market while earning a paycheck, while also learning skills that employers need. And we're not just talking about plumbers and electricians. We're talking about diverse fields with growing occupations available, such as in IT, manufacturing, and healthcare fields, like X-ray techs, community health workers, and EMTs. We also recognize that the folks who earn those industry-recognized credentials through apprenticeships earn an average wage $20,000 higher than the statewide average, have a 90% likelihood of working in Montana after graduating. Building on these sort of opportunities is critical to addressing workforce shortages that our state's currently facing, while matching skills with matching students with skills of what employers need. So too is building on our access to dual enrollment. It's a little over a year ago that I had the honor of joining the commissioner in announcing the 1-2 Free initiative. The idea here is that we'd offer 2 free dual enrollment courses through the Montana University system to all eligible high school students, with the aim of substantially increasing access to higher education. We know that dual enrollment programs provide access to a diverse set of students to be able to take a college course and see that they actually can succeed. Also makes a difference in saving money on tuition costs for students and families, streamlining workforce prep, and inspiring more students to pursue higher ed. Now, I'm not going to steal any of the thunder from the presentation we'll be receiving shortly, but I will say that in the first year of the 1-2 Free initiative, it's working. Students have saved over $7.2 million in tuition costs, and students from more than 150 schools in our state took some form of dual enrollment, leading to a 25% boost in the number of dual enrollment credits taken. Now, I recognize when I talk about costs saved that someone's paying that cost, and that higher ed has taken a big chunk of that. But more than the money saved, we have to think of it also as the potential for money and opportunity earned. By better exposing our students to the benefits of higher education, and doing so while they're still in high school, we're providing even more Montanans with that opportunity to pursue their potential. Finally, I'd like to touch briefly on the MUS two-year commission, which we'll all hear more about later in the agenda today. As the commission reviews potential restructuring of the Montana University system, with particular emphasis on our two-year and community colleges, I want to take a moment to applaud that work. Truly believe that we can expand access on the success of public education if we're also always looking at expanding pathways for our students. Includes looking beyond the four-year degree, engaging students and others in a cultural shift in how we can perceive options for students after high school. We have to make sure that plentiful options are available for the students who want to pursue a two-year degree or even professionally recognized credentials or certificates that may not even take the full 2 years. By evaluating the structure of our current system and making efficient changes, we can make this all the more possible. I often say, and I do believe, that public education is the great equalizer. Yet all of us, including all of you who are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate, the members of the Board of Public Education and the Board of Regents, all of us have to recognize that it really is a system of public education that affords success. We gather here today because not just for something to do one more meeting, but it's enshrined in our Constitution that the Board of Education collectively, that being the Board of Public Ed and the Board of Regents, it's responsible for long-range planning, for coordinating, and evaluating policies and programs for our state's educational systems. You'll note that throughout my comments, I tried to talk about not just necessarily one section of higher ed or our K-12 system, but the connectedness to all of it. I ask that while we meet and very infrequently as an overall board, I ask that all of you, when you're working at both the Board of Public Ed side and the Board of Regents side, recognize that we can't always and we shouldn't be segregating between primary and secondary and post-secondary. It's more than just a constitutional imperative. It really is our obligation to look at this overall system as each of us have something to be contributing, and recognizing that when we talk about student success and academic success and opportunity, it flows through our Montanans all throughout. So again, thank you for the good work that you do. Thank you for the commitment to that great equalizer in our state. And thank you, whatever hat you wear and whatever board you sit on, recognizing that we all have to look at this as one collective system. Now we will hear reports first from Regent Lozar of the Board of Regents.
Thank you, Mr. Governor, and thank you for bringing together both of these boards. My remarks today will be kind of focused in three different areas. So focusing on access to education, focusing on affordability particularly of higher education, and focusing on removing barriers that we see that we have control over as members of the Board of Regents. It's been a pretty busy couple days here at the Montana State University. I want to extend my gratitude to President Cruzado for hosting us and hosting us today for the Board of Education meeting. We did get a chance to meet with Education Interim Committee, who are also engaged in doing the right thing for the young people in the state of Montana. First, we talked about a pretty exciting set of initiatives around retaining rural teachers and recruiting rural teachers in Montana. And I know this body has been grappling with preparing rural teachers for quite some time, and we've made a lot of progress over the past 2 to 3 years in partnership with the Office of Public Instruction. And here at MSU and its partners with Superintendent Artson, we're recently awarded $6.2 million for an innovative online program to bring K-12 teachers to our rural schools. And this includes $3.1 million from the Department of Education and then matching funds from service providers around the state of Montana. 5-year project is really focusing on getting nearly 80 teachers into our rural schools, and teachers that, one, live in a rural area, two, they already have a bachelor's degree, and they want to make a career change to become a teacher. And we're finding ways within the university system to bring them into the fold when they're looking at retooling and reskilling. There is a need to commit to teaching for 3 years and high needs for this particular program. One of the things I think is most exciting about this is that their tuition and their fees will be paid, and they will receive a living wage stipend, so they'll be able to access this next level of education. I wanted to congratulate all those that have worked hard on this opportunity we have in rural Montana. In particular, a couple individuals that the board got the opportunity to meet yesterday. MSU education professor Ann Eubank. She's the PI, the project's PI for this particular project. Tricia Seifert at the Department of Ed here at Montana State, and then a couple other co-principal investigators, Jennifer Lubeck and Jane Downey. I also want to extend gratitude to Superintendent Artson and her team that worked in partnership with the Commissioner's Office and Montana State University to make this happen. As I mentioned, access is absolutely critical. It's one of the key strategies that the Montana Board of Regents has. And in that access, we focus on affordability. And we are the state's public higher education institution and governing body. And we have an institution that is open and accessible to all Montanans. And that's what makes our institutions unique compared to others. But we have to focus on affordability. And this last session, with your leadership, Governor Bullock, and our partners in the legislature, we were able to provide and receive funding to, again, as you mentioned, 6 out of 8 bienniums, we were able to put a freeze on tuition. There were years ago, maybe 20 years ago, where our Montanans were paying way more of their median income to higher education, and we've done a fantastic job under your leadership to make sure that our Montanans can access higher education. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the scholarship, the Access Scholarship Program that came from your guidance, came from the leadership from the Board of Regents as well as our legislative partners, and putting aside $2 million this last legislative session for scholarships so Montanans can access our public institutions here. And I know our foundations and our funders are working hard to meet that $2 million match, to have a total of $4 million that's available to our students. We know that removing barriers is key to what we need to do to be agile. We know that all resident students are at the heart of the Montana University system, yet based on historic enrollment patterns, we know that 40% of Montana high school students won't go on to higher education. And clearly we can do, we must do, and we can do better. For many of the potential students, navigating the complexity of the university system poses an insurmountable barrier. Commissioner Christian yesterday mentioned navigating the hidden curriculum for those that are interested in joining the university system. It's a gauntlet of hurdles a student must clear before ever setting foot on a college campus. And I think all of us in this room can, and on the call, can attest to the experience doing ACT tests or attaining your transcripts and doing your admissions, and the sort of anxiety that we have and our parents and our students' parents feel when they're trying just to get into higher education. And so we've embarked on a very important project, a project that includes quite a few partners across the state of Montana. Our partners at OPI, our partners at Reach Higher Montana. We have Executive Director Kelly Creswell here. Partners within the Students Assistance Foundation who are helping us put together a portal for college and career access portal that we will learn about a little bit later today in today's meeting. So I won't go into much detail. But it is certainly something that is going to be creating, help us create some pathways and some pipelines for middle school students who are wanting to explore what education they can access and what their workforce outcomes could be, to our adult learners who are looking into seeing how to change their careers and what opportunities exist in the university system. And lastly, the other part of our portal that we are very excited about rolling out in the next year is a central application through the portal. And I know our deputy commissioners are going to share a little bit today about the portal and about this application. But I think ultimately what we're trying to do is create the easiest path for Montanans to be able to access all the great institutions that we have in public higher education. And lastly, Governor, you mentioned dual enrollment. This is something that you've supported, and this board has supported as a top priority over the last 8 years. And we've seen numbers grow up to nearly 7,500 Montana students, high school students, are getting credit through their high schools and through our colleges. And you know, I think we are becoming a leader in the nation around dual enrollment. It's saving our families money, it's saving our students money, and it's giving a leg up for our students who want to experience higher education. With that, Mr. Governor, I will conclude with a couple thoughts. I think there's a lot of different highlights we could share, and those are just a few of them. And I believe the Montana University system is well positioned to meet the challenges that lie ahead. And we look forward to working with you to produce the diverse, skilled, and well-rounded graduates we need to lead our state into the future.
Thank you, Regent Lozar, and thank you to all the members of the board and the commissioner. And Member Schottel, if you could give the report of the Board of Public Education.
Thank you, Governor Bullock. I'd be pleased to do that. And first of all, I'd like to thank Regent Lozar and all the members of the Board of Regents for the work that they do.
Hold on one second, Member Schottel. We're going to see if we can pump up the volume a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that any better? Can you hear me more clearly now?
That's it.
Hello?
There we go. Thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt you. Please proceed.
Okay. All right. I'll just start again then, Governor Bullock, and we are appreciative of this opportunity to have the meeting of both sides of the Board of Public Education. And I'd like to thank Regent Lozar for his report that brings us up to date on the many great things that are happening in higher education. And those of us that serve on the Board of Public Education in the K-12 setting are very well aware of our role in trying to help prepare our communities and our students and our staff so that our 147 plus thousand students that are in Montana's public schools can successfully graduate and move on to careers, and hopefully we want to see them access our higher education system and all of the opportunities that are available for them there. And along that line, given the fact that we recently finished a legislative year, that always provides an extra opportunity for our legislators to look at what can be done to help our schools provide more innovative programs and help our students to succeed. And this past year, specifically HB 351 and 387, did some of that innovative planning, and along with the Board of Public Education and OPI, we were able to set the application and annual report timelines for both the Transformational Learning Grant and the Advanced Opportunity Aid. And we certainly look forward to seeing the student outcomes from these innovative programs that were approved for funding at our last board meeting. We were also pleased to approve the Governor's Future Ready Cabinet Resolution, and we look forward to whatever role that we can play in helping make this vision become a reality. Our board responsibilities include a variety of items around policies and procedures, support, licensure. And during this past year, we also worked to provide some additional licensure options, because they continue, as was mentioned earlier, to be important to reduce Montana's teacher shortage and to put other options of it in place in our communities. So to that end, we approved a change in Chapter 57, which allows a 1-year license while new teachers from other states are awaiting an opportunity to complete the praxis exam. And one of the examples of this is that we heard that our military families frequently if one of the spouses is a teacher, is unable to be licensed when they first come to the state, but have to wait for a year. So we hope that that will reduce that waiting period and again, provide us high quality teachers for our students. We continue to work with OPI to provide flexibility to schools while still providing a level of accountability. So we worked to approve variance to standards requests, corrective action plans, and timelines for schools and intensive assistance. And after receiving a comprehensive report from OPI, the board approved the final accreditation of all schools. And this indeed is a team, and we are most appreciative of the work of OPI and school administrators of Montana and the Rural School Alliance and all the other educational agencies that work so hard to combine their efforts to support the schools and staff that may need a little extra to help their students be successful. The Board of Public Education participated in many ongoing discussions on assessment, and we approved the Student Performance Transition Plan as presented by OPI that tells us what are the assessments that need to be in place so that helps us understand and assure that our students are learning and growing on an annual basis. And we also approved by recommendation from OPI, the accreditation standards that had some changes made to them during this last year. As mentioned earlier and continues to be, we're always pleased to work with the higher education program. And this year, we approved that new Masters of Arts in the Teaching program and a new curricular program in computer science that were both made available at MSU. So it's also important that the board understands what are all the statewide support systems that we have in place for our children across the state that attend school in 822 different public schools. So by extension, we were able to hear the information from the Montana Digital Academy, and we're always pleased with the many offerings that they are able to offer. So sometimes many of our rural schools, but they also are very active and available in our urban centers as well. We were presented information about the same thing we were talking about earlier, the annual teacher shortage, and what are some of the options that are being put in place to help that. We talked about teacher licensure again, and what are some of the things that the board can do as we look at teacher licensure to ensure we have highly qualified teachers, but we also make access as easy as we can to recruit and retain those teachers within our state. Of course, we continue to exercise our responsibility for the Montana School for the Deaf and Blind by approving their policies and personnel hires, travel requests, and any budgetary modifications that we have. And we also evaluate their superintendent. It's always a great meeting in May when we travel to Great Falls to their site to enjoy not only a lunch, but a tour and have an opportunity to see the students that are actually attending Montana School for the Deaf and Blind and see the wonderful things that they are working on. Lastly, we had 2 new CISPAC appointments this year and 4 new representatives to Macy. We welcome these members and we certainly thank them for their service. It has been an interesting and busy year. And before I leave, I would just be remiss if I didn't, again, take a moment to specifically thank Pete Donovan and Chris Stockton for their diligence in the day-to-day work they do in that office, because they keep all the members of the Board of Public Education well informed and prepared for our meetings. So as a board, we are most appreciative of the opportunity to serve, and it is exciting and interesting work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Shuttle, and thank all the members of the Board of Public Education for your good work, and would also reiterate that thanks Pete Donovan for all that good work as well. Superintendent Arntzen.
Thank you, Governor. It's an honor to be part of this, and I appreciate the leadership. I also appreciate the leadership of Chair Lozar, Chair Schottel, Commissioner, Regents, members, Montanans, what a wonderful time to bring together, because this is about students, this is about lifelong learning. And I think this strong partnership is what has been occurring, and in the future, I know that it will be even more. What I would like to bring to the table, and it might be a duplication of our previous meeting in solitary. So I know I brought this in front of the Board of Public Education. I know I have brought it in front of the Regents just most recently. But our state plan, which is Every Student Succeed Act, which it replaced the No Child Left Behind, was approved by the Secretary in the spring of 18. We have two very technical amendments that we are bringing forward from the state of Montana because things have changed. The most important one that I want to talk about that deals with students has to deal with English language learners. We have a very large growing population of Hispanics that we really never recognized before. We also have a German population with the Hutterite colonies that we have across our state. And of course, we have our very authentic indigenous languages and our immigrant languages. So we have a new test that tests this. There are very few tests within this entire sphere, and it became more rigorous. So we brought a group of experts together from the field this summer to look at what the criteria would be for entering and exiting. And the amendment that we are offering then reflects the rigorous action, but it also reflects a pathway to acknowledge services to these very important students that are part of our schools. The other amendment that we are offering for our state ESSA plan has to do with Title IV-A dollars. Title IV-A dollars are under an umbrella of things that are outside academics. They have to deal with school climate, school safety, mental health, but also technology and how to integrate technology in the academics, but also in the other frameworks within the side of school. Monies came to Montana in a much larger amount since our plan was given and signed by the Secretary in spring of 18. As a result, we're very happy to go ahead and give $10,000 to every school, and then after that, give a and B allotment depending on how many students that they have within their school. That means as a very flexible dollar, something that can be used in and out. It can be also gathered with Title I dollars to make even a larger statement within a school. So offering that flexibility we had to change our methodology because we changed the way we distributed the Title IV-A dollars. Those are the two amendments that we are offering up. We hope to have, we've had public comment, it's on our website. We've had multiple conversations across the state with a lot of partners, as again, you're probably hearing this for another time, but part of this is to have that consultation. And I do believe it is a Montana state plan, and it should be a living plan. And it does indeed put our students first. So we will be submitting this plan then at the end of the month. The other thing that I would like to share is, and Governor, you were there sitting right next to me at the land board yesterday, and how exciting that our school trust lands, our state lands are working for our students, not just in K-12, but they're working for us in the university system as well. And they have improved almost to $5 million more. So what I can say of the $70.7 million that was given to students, that is a promise from the legislature in statute, that state trust dollar is what hits the bucket first. And then other precious tax dollars are added to that to make the $70 million. So it was very exciting yesterday. I received a big check and put it on the wall at the agency to support all of our public schools. So Governor, I know you champion that with the director to make sure that we have great yields in our timber, that we can access our treasures, that we are doing real estate actions, and that our #1 industry of agriculture in grazing, that we are improving. So I want to thank you for your leadership in that, and I wanted to share that exciting news that our access to our public lands, not just for schools, but also for what we do in Recreate in Montana. And other than that, I have no other things to add, but I thank you again for your leadership, and Chairman and Chairman Schottel as well, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent, and also thank you for the good work on updating the ESSA plan, and certainly you'll be receiving a letter from me that I concur in both of the amendments, and it's good and necessary work being done. And thank all of you, the members as well as staff, for the good work. Do any board members have questions or comments on the reports before we move on to the next agenda item?
Governor Bullock, this is Jesse Barnhart from Broadus. I would like to make a quick comment.
Please.
Okay. It's a quick testimony to something that Regent Lozar mentioned earlier. I had the pleasure of working with Jane Downey and the students from MSU the previous 2 school years in my classroom in Broadus. She runs a great program, and this is a program that is beneficial to everyone involved. Just thought I would mention that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Barnhart. Any other questions, comments, moments of discussion from members of any of the boards? Great, we'll move on to the next agenda item. During the 2019 legislative session, legislators passed a measure that creates a special commission to study the structure and governance of the Montana university system, with particular attention to the 2-year colleges and our community colleges. We're fortunate to have members of the MUS 2-year commission with us today to give an update and overview of that work. I'd like to turn it over to Regent Lozar and Regent Tuss of the Board of Regents and Member Quinlan of the Board of Public Education.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for this opportunity. It is an honor to serve on this 2-year commission, and thus far the commission has had 2 very productive meetings, both in Helena with members of the legislature as well as public members, including members from the Board of Public Education and the Board of Regents. We do have a presentation today from various members, Deputy Commissioners Tessman and Trevor, which will be presented to the full board today. What is notable is when you step aside from our 2-year system, which includes 4 different kinds of 2-year schools in Montana. We have tribal schools, we have tribal colleges, we have community colleges, we have embedded 2-year schools, and then of course we have independent 2-year schools. And I believe that sometimes when you step aside from that, you're not sure that that's the type of structure that we would have if we were to start from the beginning. However, we've discovered that it works. In fact, it works well for Montanans, and it works well for Montana's private sector in terms of their current and future workforce needs. And so, without further ado, I think it's appropriate to turn it over to the 2 deputy commissioners who will walk us through a couple of presentations relative to 2-year education in Montana.
Governor, members of the board, good afternoon. It's a privilege to be here and present this. Earlier this morning, we gave the same presentation, and we dubbed it Monday Night Football. I'll be the broadcaster, and my color commentator to the right here is Brock Tessman. But this afternoon, I think of this more as ESPN Sports Center. We're going to give you the highlights and quickly move through it. Hopefully it'll be as interesting, and we're going to do it in 3 chunks, a little bit different. We have some excerpts from a larger PowerPoint presentation on 2-year education, and really just to frame this, these slides, is a major challenge for us with the 2-year commission to get the information out about the MUS and what we've done in the last 20 to 15 years related to 2-year education. And so what you're going to see here are just 4 or 5 slides that kind of set the tenor of that presentation with some real foundational information. And the slide that we start with is this slide that Regent Tuss just discussed, and it's the kind of the framework of two-year education in Montana. You see the hierarchical layout of the Montana University system, the 2 standalone two-year campuses, Great Falls and Helena. We have integrated two-year campuses across all of our 4-year campuses, Gallatin, City, Highlands, Missoula College, and Bitterroot College. And then we have the 3, our partners with the community colleges, the 3 community colleges, as well as the tribal colleges. And so at no means do we ever mean to leave out anyone in our data. It's just the nature of the information we have is primarily related to the MUS, and that's the information we'll convey to you.
Yeah, Mr. Governor, members of the board, one point I want to echo. Regent Tuss, you mentioned that this is a somewhat complex system. It has different types of institutions, many different institutions. In my role, I get a chance to visit those institutions and understand the complexity of their mission, all the way from career and technical education to transfer education, community development. The reality is that this complexity is there for a reason. And sometimes it's easy to wish for a simple and clean system, but the system that's evolved over time is a system that meets our workforce development needs, it meets the needs of students and communities. And so it's there for a reason. It doesn't mean it can't continue to change over time, but I'm proud of the differentiated institutions we have, and I think it serves our state well.
So this next slide is a long-term look at enrollment of the Montana University system, two-year colleges as well as the community colleges. Basically, the length of time we've had electronic data and the movement of the vocational VOTEX back in the late 80s into the MUS and eventually renaming them as colleges of technology. And then seeing their growth all the way through the recession of 2009 through 2012. And then you see that the decline there of the booming economy that we have and folks finding their way into the workforce.
And I think this graph here is a graph that would be replicated across the country in terms of two-year systems with respect to enrollment. And I think in most respects, this is an illustration of a two-year system that's doing its job. When there is an economic downturn, the recession, as Tyler mentioned, 2008, 9, 10, 11, we expect to have a system that can receive students, train more high school graduates, get adult learners back into an upskilling program, a retooling program, and that's why you see that big bump. Conversely, when the economy is red hot, high school graduates oftentimes they may have a good workforce opportunity immediately out of high school. Adult learners, potential adult learners, well, you know what, they may be for us to show the adaptability of the two-year system.
And so another way of looking at this is just focusing on head count of our two-year colleges, and you can see the growth from 2001 through 2011, up from 4,000 students to over 9,000, and then that orange line indicating what percent of two-year is of the total enrollment in the Montana University system, growing from 13% in the early 2000s to close to 1/4 of the overall enrollment. And to look at the degrees and certificates awarded, a lot of the attention to two-year lately has been focused on career and technical education and the question of, does the Montana University system provide enough of that? Are we capable of meeting the workforce demands related to career and technical ed? And just as a point of reference here, the different types of awards that we give out are some of them very much CTE or career and technical education oriented. That big blue chunk on the right there of associate of applied science degrees, those are your 60 credit associate degrees that are purely CTE. And then you move to your left counterclockwise, certificates of applied science. Those are 30 credit degrees, CTE. And then you see the two small slices there. Those are what we deem stackable credentials. These might be anywhere between 9 and 16 credits that you could get on your way to a certificate of applied science or associate of applied science. And then finally, the Associate of Science there in green. Some of that is CTE, nurses in particular. And then we have the orange or red, whatever you want to call that, red, I guess, Associate of Arts, and those are your transfer degrees.
And I think this pie chart really captures the full range of the two-year mission. We have now not only our community colleges, but all of our two-year embedded, our two-year standalone MUS colleges with a comprehensive mission, which means they deliver career and technical education. That's the orange and blue and small slices. But they're also great launch points for students. Even if you know you're going to transfer and you want more of a general education curriculum, it may make most sense for you to stay at a two-year college that's close by, that offers a great value, and then transfer. And that's what the red and green represent in the bottom.
And we take a look at how are these degrees awarded, changed over time. And you see that top blue line there? That's the Associate of Applied Science. That's what I said was kind of the heart and soul of CTE. That's really been what two-year education, the VOTEX brought that in with them, so it's sort of natural for our two-year campuses to excel in that area. But the growth that you see has been in those certificates and then those transfer degrees. And then we just jumped probably 20 slides in the presentation, so you're going to gain back some portion of your life here. Or, I don't know if you gain it back, but you're going to at least save somewhere. I didn't want to leave out this slide because tuition freeze has been a hallmark of our relationship with the executive and the legislature for quite some time. And two-year education has been probably the most front and center when it comes to tuition freeze. Not probably, it has been. And here's the reason why. Go back to the early 80s and look at the increase. It might be, I'm having a hard time seeing anymore, but that could be the late 90s as well. You can see the growth there regardless of the amount of tuition increase, the rates that we charged. And I'd make a note here, one of the reasons why is from 1992 to 2005, state appropriations to the Montana University system actually declined by $7 million. Amazing, because since that time, which was about 2007 to recent, it increased by $100 million, completely different eras. And so in that era of defunding by the state, we increased tuition. But it got to a point where we might be pricing students out. And how do we know that? That's the orange line. And it compares the rate of tuition rates to median income. What percent of median income does tuition make up? And you can see that it peaked there at 8.1%.
And I think that orange line is particularly relevant for the two-year colleges. Absolutely, access, affordability, it's important across the entire system, but for the two-year colleges, it is the value proposition. And I think when that orange line starts to creep up too much, that's when we see it become a challenging decision for students to either opt in or to return to learn. So it's so nice to see this last period of 12, 13, 14 years where it's flat or even dipping down.
And so really
I thought this was a good time just to interrupt to say, this morning, when they were on Monday Night Football, we were calling them Troy Aikman and Joe Buck. And now that we're talking about the 80s and we're at ESPN Sports Center, I think we're going to go with Craig Kilborn. I know that's the Wayback Machine, but he is an MSU graduate. And Chris Berman. One of you gets to be Boomer, and one of you gets to be Craig. You choose.
Well, that's great. As long as it's entertaining, anything but boring. That's our motto now. Really, what the heart of this presentation, though, was landing on initiatives. What we have done in the past, which we're going to let the past have, to what we're doing now. And that leads us to the portal. And Amy, if you could help us out there with bringing the portal up, and we'll transition into that unless there's any other questions about these slides.
And Regent Sheehy, Tyler played football at least in the late 80s, and I do remember that. It's slowed down a little bit since then.
Depends on what distance. So we bring to you the portal, reachhighermontana.org.
I mean, this is the third time that we presented this in the last, 24 hours or so, and so we're joking around a little bit, and honestly, to be quite serious, this is a huge deal, and a lot of work has gone into making this a reality. I think, of course, we've had a web presence. Of course, we've wanted to reach out to students for quite some time. But really, over the last year or so, I mean, since I've been in this position, I've seen our office partner with the legislature, partner with the Office of Public Instruction, partner with the Department of Labor and Industry, and most recently, partner with Reach Higher Montana, and really reinvigorate a long-standing relationship in the name of college access, and in particular, resident student access. The College and Career Planning Portal is a work in progress, but there is already a whole lot to be proud of. You can look at just this landing page here, and you can understand how this is going to radically increase our ability to reach out to students all the way down into middle school and perhaps beyond, help them start thinking about what their aptitudes and interests might mean in terms of career possibilities. Through the Department of Labor and Industry, we actually are even looking at it's called a lifestyle reality check. It asks students to think about what kind of lifestyle they want, size of house, cars, that kind of thing, and it tells you what kind of salary you need and then what kind of careers give you that option. So you start there, and then you can work through our Montana Career Pathways, clearly outlining high school coursework, college degrees, potential career outcomes, and what you need to do every step along the way to get there. Education options. A student lives on the High Line, South Central Montana, thinking maybe they have to travel all the way across the state and they have to get a 4-year degree or it means no college. No, this portal will help them understand that if they want to be a medical assistant, if they want to be in welding, there's probably an option much closer to them that might mean a 30-credit certificate or a 1-year program. It might mean an online opportunity. And I think that this is actually a great tool for reaching these students that we've had a bit of a more difficult time connecting with. And I sometimes dislike lumping everyone together into the 40% or the 45%. It's one term that actually describes a very diverse set of students. But the reality is that's a big number. And in order to get to that big number, we need to employ some new strategies. The portal will help do that. There's information there on financial aid and scholarship opportunities. And then importantly, you'll see over the next 6 months or so, the centralized application process right in the center of all this. As students learn about different options across Montana and they think about where they might want to apply, in one place, they'll have more information. That information will be easier to access, and then through the centralized application, it'll be easier to act on. So we're reducing barriers and making it easier for students and their families to choose post-secondary education in Montana. It would not be possible for us to sit here today if it were not for Kelly and her team. I love the way this looks. I think it's going to get even better over time. We'll add new bells and whistles, but we're so proud to have this in front of you. And so I like that we're continuing to joke about all of this, but honestly, this is a huge deal for us today. So I want to thank Tyler for letting me talk about it, but really Tyler and his team and Kelly and her team have driven this forward.
I have a serious comment. I agree with Brock. This is a really important thing, and I think it's important for this board sitting as a whole because this is the nexus between us and the high schools. This is a potential for us to communicate directly with K through 12 at a middle school level, is what we were told this morning, so that kids can start using this tool and connecting with us at the higher education. So all joking aside, this is a huge deal for the communication that this board is meant to engender.
Commissioner Christian.
Yeah, I would just add 3,700 students last year left your high school institutions and went into the workforce, but they didn't continue on in higher ed in any fashion. And whether it's the governor's Future Ready cabinet or beyond, we know that we need to capture those students to meet any of the workforce attainment goals. And so that's a huge population for us that's incredibly important.
Other question? Oh, Superintendent.
Thank you, Governor. I agree. It is about K-12, but it's also about those students that aren't engaged, that don't get their diploma. And they may be 27, they may be 25, they may be 30 when they realize they would like to do something different and come back. So what a great opportunity for a portal for any Montanan or a military family moving in to see what is available. The more that we can broadcast this across our state, I believe that you've got a key right here. Let's turn the lock. Let's move this thing. I'm empowered by this. Thank you.
Mr. Governor, members of the board, Superintendent Arntzen, I couldn't agree more. I mean, if I want to wax poetic about this is about believing in the potential of every part of our land and our state and every kind of student in our state. And I think no matter what we call it, it's got to be something, cradle to career. It is a full spectrum approach that this is going to kick off. And so I appreciate your partnership along the way.
Other questions or comments on this area? Regent Shi.
I guess the second time around I had some new ideas, and we've been talking about how to get the school counselors involved in this, and maybe a suggestion from the superintendent that school counselors ask their students, the high school ones in particular, to take a run at this before they come for their counseling session, so that the student is initiating that as a prerequisite, not necessarily requirement, but some sort of a suggestion that prior to visiting with your counselor, you'd be best served by going through the process of this sheet.
Brock. Oh, I thought you had some.
No, I agree.
And encourage you all as well, because when the school counselors have their meetings too, that I found that like we did a lot of work on both childhood hunger and things like that by sitting down, really working with those counselors to make sure that they can see the accessibility and the availability too. Are there other questions or comments in this area? Oh, Regent Miller.
As we're talking about, thank you, Governor. As we're talking about high school counselors, it has recently come to my attention that there is such a divide between what we're doing here as our board, as the Board of Regents, and what high school counselors are seeing within their students. So I think this is a great opportunity as we're talking about this to reach out to our counselors and have them meet with members of our board or set up a committee so that we can understand what students in high school are going through and why they're not coming to college or why they're going out of state. I think it could be very helpful. Thank you.
Superintendent.
Thank you. I appreciate this dialogue. I'd be more than happy to set something up possibly for the March meeting or however you may want that, Chair Lozar. And they would be probably very honored. I know their schedule is busy and it might be spring break, but I don't know, but I'd be more than happy to make that reach out to these wonderful people.
Other questions or comments from members of the board? I'd also, and the portal really is amazing. It does have the opportunity to really change the way that we're thinking about higher education, thinking about kids' futures, no matter where they are in this 147,000 square mile state. Also really did appreciate one of the earlier slides talking about the 2-year tuition fees history. And I'd just underscore for those at the Board of Regents that often turn around and think, well, it's so difficult from the perspective of you're asked more and more, not only from my office, not only from citizens, but also legislature, to do more. And I know at times that it feels like it's significant budget constraints along the way, but this also, when we put this in the context of what we, and that's from Democrats and Republicans, have been able to do in Montana. If you looked 2009 to 2018, in real terms, 46 of the states in the country decreased their state investment in higher education by on average 17%. And there are some states that have really gutted or balanced their budgets on the backs often of higher education and trying to do the same in K-12 where there isn't sort of constitutional entitlement. So I do appreciate tight budgets at times, but I also appreciate that the investment that Montanans have made, knowing that we entrust you all as well to then figure out the way to get that return, and that return is all throughout the system, so thank you. I think the next point of discussion is dual enrollment.
Mr. Governor and members of the board, I think that I can work through this presentation fairly quickly. I have a few basic points to make, but I don't want to suggest at all that the speed of the presentation or the simplicity of the points diminish the importance of what we've seen in terms of dual enrollment growth. If we're one of the national leaders in terms of state contributions to higher education, we are also now a national leader in terms of dual enrollment participation. And you can see here, pretty much across the board, we're looking at about 1,000 student increase every single year in terms of high school students participating in courses that give them college level credit while they're still enrolled in high school. And we know that this kind of coursework increases affordability. It increases affordability because students are able to achieve these credits generally at very low or no cost in recent years with the 1-2 free program. We know that it increases success rates for students. They not only develop additional skills and knowledge, but they develop confidence and an increased belief that they're college material. It accelerates the timeline and makes it more likely that they complete their 2-year degree or their 4-year degree on time. There are so many advantages here, and in my, I think, privileged role to connect with my national counterparts, I understand how much progress we've made in Montana. There are still a couple of areas I think that we can continue to develop, and this slide here highlights one area that's been a priority and will continue to be a priority. We talk about access and increasing educational opportunities for rural populations, our Class B and C schools, for example. Our biggest leaps in terms of dual enrollment growth have been in those Class B and C schools. We're trying to focus on CTE opportunities in those areas. It's not always easy, but I think even in the last 4 or 5 years, you can see substantial expansion of dual enrollment opportunity. It doesn't mean that we don't want to provide more opportunities for our big schools, but they're pretty close to all the way there at this point in time. And yeah, this is a good one to start with. We talk about 2-year education. Look, 2-year education, graduation rates, they fluctuate over time. Students have more reasons to leave for a job opportunity perhaps and then come back and finish later. But look at the difference between on-time graduation rates. And by on time, I mean strictly on time, 2-year graduation rates for those students who have experienced dual enrollment credit versus those that haven't. This tells a great story in terms of how dual enrollment supports student success, even on top of student access. The next slide is sort of the same story, or actually the prior slide is sort of the same story with 4-year graduation rates. I can tell you moving forward, Governor, members of the board, that we will continue to prioritize growth. The Montana Digital Academy is a great opportunity for us to reach more students through online education. We'll continue to think about partnerships with our high schools so that we can increase CTE opportunities in every part of the state. And we'll be vigilant when it comes to quality. And I don't just mean maintenance of current quality, but making sure that some of the best college credit experiences that our students have are on our high school campuses with instructors that are qualified and more than capable and in fact excellent at providing that college credit. It's a tremendous opportunity. I know our 2-year leaders, they see that as a great recruiting tool, honestly. If you can reach those students, give them that college experience, they're much more likely to make the decision to follow through and enroll full-time or at least enroll on your campus after they graduate high school. Really exciting news. Governor, the work that you've done, the commitment you've made to this is noticed and it's generating results.
Thank you, Brock. You don't have any play-by-play?
Sorry, I'm done.
Great.
Questions or comments from members? Regent Nyson.
Thank you, Governor. From the last meeting we had, I asked Superintendent Arntzen, I said, how's it working from your perspective? You know, not that I distrust Ochi and the staff there, but I think, you know, this is a two-way street. We're huge partners with each other in the success of dual enrollment. And I'd like to hear, especially from the high school teachers' perspective, from the high school administrators' perspective, superintendents, how's it going? I mean, we need to know where are the gaps, what are the pitfalls, what are the things that we're doing, and I'm sure you're in concert with Clay and his team about this. But nevertheless, I would like to keep that still as an outstanding item, that we'd like to know more about this, to fine-tune it, to tweak it, and to make it better. The second thing that I have a question about is I am just amazed we're at 8,000 people, I think, or 8,000 students. That is phenomenal. But the question is, what's the fiscal impact if that goes to 10,000, to 12,000, to 14,000? Where do the dollars come from to support this? And are we thinking about that sufficiently into the future to support the continued growth for this? Because there's only one way for us to go, and that's up. But do we have it figured out on the other side, on the fiscal side, to be able to support dual enrollment that reaches over 10,000? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. I'm glad to tackle at least the last part of that one. And we, at an earlier meeting with the board, I think in July, we talked some about this. We have your staff working with campuses and beyond to sort of run through models of what's possible, what isn't. And we'll come back to the board with some options for you all to consider at some point. I think 1-2 free has been incredibly successful. I think it is, you know, we talked a lot about when we implemented it that whatever the amount is, if it's $10, $35, $50, that creates a barrier for some students that they simply can't get over. And so I think that's built into this whole conversation, and I think the results from 1-2 3 would support that notion. When you look at things that we've done to try to increase dual enrollment, there's certainly been a bump out of 1-2 3 that would suggest a new, broader cohort of students have been able to enter. I think we need to figure out how to continue to support that. The question is, as the governor said in his open comments, it doesn't happen for free, right? It is 1-2 free, but there's still costs associated. We need to figure that out. Working with all our partners, and we intend to do that and bring back some options of how we can fiscally continue to support what I think is a very successful program.
Go ahead, Member Quinlan.
Thank you, Governor. I also am just amazed at how quickly the enrollments for dual enrollment have increased over the last 4 years, and I think it's hugely impressive and clearly providing some free opportunities for students to take these classes has really made a difference. And I totally agree, it's a confidence builder for students to then move into higher education and succeed. One of the questions that I raised for the 2-year commission for us to look at, because we are going to pursue dual enrollment a bit more, but the Board of Public Ed has made some changes, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, to make it easier for high school teachers to teach dual enrollment classes. And I think we want to look a little deeper at how that's working. Clearly, it's brought some successes, but there may be some barriers that we can still remove.
I guess I'd also add that, you know, we see this chart from when I took office and working with Commissioner Christian in higher ed. Like if we took it all the way, we've gone from about 800 students to 8,000, so a 10x increase. And when we announced the 1-2 free, we chose to do it in a welding classroom to underscore that the college credits that people can pursue all kinds of different opportunities, and including in our 2-year colleges. And I think that it's one where as the Board of Regents works through how to fund this, that also recognizing that, at least from my perspective, I hope you will continue to find a way to do it, because also outside of these meetings, we've all committed to saying, how do we get a better educated workforce? 4-year degree, 2-year degree are professionally recognized certificates. And I think what we're also doing with this is providing exposure to students that may not have ever considered themselves college material before this. And by that, the long-term return is not only to an overall economy, but hopefully then, because of that experience they had in the relatively comfortable confines of a high school, that then they're going to be matriculated in our 2- and 4-year colleges and universities, and will be getting their tuition as well. So, oh, you got it. Anything else on this? Does that conclude the Brock and Tyler show? Well, yeah. Thank you both for your presentation, and thank you for the report. And before we move to public comment, do any board members have questions or comments on either that report or anything else for the good of the order? Please. Regent
Thank you,
Dabrowski.
Governor. As I was sitting here thinking about, we're talking about students and we're talking about, but we haven't talked about parents, and I know this is a Board of Education, but really parents as either tuition paying or interested in their own student success, I think are a key part to all of this. And I just put that out there as a statement. It might be a matter of, let's not forget where we market or educate the portal. Could be an opportunity to do something beyond counselors, beyond, because I think parents really have an obligation and interest, and maybe some of those parents are the 45% who didn't finish school themselves, and if they sort of start to see that it might be easier for them as they're helping their students. So I just think all of Montana, we have a responsibility there beyond even just our formal education.
No, I think that's a great point, an absolutely great point. Other comments, questions? Now turn to public comment. We'll ask for, if there's anyone in the audience that, and Tyler, don't get up. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment, please come to the podium. And if so, well, before we move to the phones, is there anyone in the audience who would like to make public comment? If only land board meetings were always that easy. Is there anyone on the phone that would like to make public comment for the record? And if so, please go ahead and unmute your phone. Seeing no public comment, thank you. The board will also accept written testimony submitted to McCall Flynn of my office at mflynn@mt.gov by 5:00 p.m. Friday, November 29th. If you do so choose to provide written testimony through Ms. Flynn, please enter testimony in the subject line to ensure that board members receive the testimony. Do any board members have final comments or closing remarks? Well, given none, thank you again for joining what is a statutory obligation to have this meeting, but also a recognition of both the need to look at an overall educational system. And even in our brief conversations today, it's evident to me that you really are, that it's not cabining from a higher ed and saying just that, or from a K-12 system. I'm certainly confident about the future of continuing to both innovate and provide meet the students' needs and workers' needs in our state. I'm confident about the future of education in our state, a state that has made it clear that we value public education and understand that a quality education is indeed the best way to ensure strong economies, strong families, and a bright future for this state. So thanks again. Thanks for what you do every single day to make sure that public education remains our great equalizer. And with that, the meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Governor.
Yeah. Did I keep you all from